This is Berry TV, where the truth is always in the headline. We'll take you around the world in 5 minutes, so let's get into today's top stories.
Today, the world's most critical oil artery is under military control. The United States has effectively sealed off Iran's access to global trade routes, and the consequences are already rippling across the global economy. This is no longer just a regional conflict. This is a pressure point that could impact every country on Earth. The U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports has now entered its third day, enforced by over 10,000 troops, multiple warships, and air support. This comes after ceasefire negotiations between Washington and Tehran collapsed in Pakistan. Despite diplomatic efforts, both sides remain far apart on key demands. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz, responsible for nearly 20% of global oil shipments, is now partially restricted. While some vessels are allowed through, Iranian exports are being choked off. Iran has condemned the blockade as illegal, while the U.S. frames it as a peace enforcement measure. But tensions are escalating fast, with military assets on both sides on high alert. Energy markets are already reacting. Oil prices are climbing, supply chains are tightening, and inflation risks are rising globally. The IMF is warning of economic instability tied directly to this crisis, with potential emergency funding needs reaching tens of billions of dollars. If this blockade escalates into direct confrontation, we're looking at a scenario that could trigger a global recession or worse. And tonight, one question remains unanswered. Is this containment, or the opening move of a wider war? A rare opportunity for peace collapsed. For the first time in decades, Israel and Lebanon sat at the same table. But tonight, that fragile diplomatic moment has unraveled, and violence is filling the vacuum. Talks hosted in Washington between Israeli and Lebanese officials ended without a breakthrough. These were the first direct engagements since the 1980s, aimed at stabilizing southern Lebanon and curbing Hezbollah's influence. But Hezbollah, armed and backed by Iran, has already rejected any outcome from the talks. Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes continue across southern Lebanon, with thousands killed and over 1 million displaced in recent weeks. The humanitarian situation is deteriorating rapidly, with warnings of a growing hunger crisis. This becomes even more dangerous. This isn't just Israel and Lebanon. It's part of a broader regional power struggle involving Iran, the U.S., and multiple global players. Europe is now scrambling to secure shipping routes, while Russia benefits from rising oil prices tied to the instability. The risk? A localized conflict morphing into a multi-front regional war. And right now, diplomacy is losing ground to military escalation. Back here in the United States, a political earthquake is shaking Washington. 2 members of Congress, one Republican, one Democrat, have abruptly resigned under the weight of serious misconduct allegations. Congressman Tony Gonzalez and Congressman Eric Swalwell both stepped down following mounting accusations. Gonzalez admitted to an inappropriate relationship with a staffer, while Swalwell faces multiple allegations of sexual assault, including a new accusation that has intensified scrutiny. Both were facing potential expulsion votes, an extremely rare and serious move in Congress. The resignations come amid growing public frustration over accountability and ethics in government. This isn't just a domestic story. Political instability in Washington affects global confidence in U.S. leadership. At a time when the U.S. is deeply involved in international crises, from Iran to Ukraine, internal turmoil weakens its negotiating power. And there's a broader question here. Is the system correcting itself or exposing deeper cracks? Either way, trust in institutions just took another hit. What if war, elections, even human lives became betting opportunities? That's not hypothetical anymore. It's happening right now. Online prediction markets are exploding in popularity, allowing users to bet on real-world events, from military strikes to political decisions. Platforms like Polymarket are handling millions of dollars in wagers tied to global crises. Even more concerning, some bets appear to align suspiciously with real-world developments, raising fears of insider knowledge or manipulation. Journalists and analysts warn that publicly available information is being exploited, and in some cases, reporters themselves are being harassed over outcomes tied to these bets. This raises serious ethical questions. When financial incentives are tied to crises, does that distort reality? Could misinformation be spread intentionally to influence outcomes and profits? Some argue these markets reflect truth better than traditional media. Others say they create dangerous incentives. One thing is clear: the line between information and exploitation is blurring fast. If you thought the cost of living was already high, brace yourself. The world's top financial watchdog is issuing a stark warning. We may be heading into another global economic shock. The International Monetary Fund is urging countries to conserve energy as global supply disruptions intensify. The warning comes as geopolitical tensions, especially in the Middle East, drive oil prices upward. The IMF estimates that emergency financial support needs could reach between $20 and $40 billion, particularly for vulnerable regions. They're advising governments to avoid broad subsidies and instead focus on targeted relief measures. Here's the bigger picture. Rising energy costs feed directly into inflation, affecting food, transport, and everyday goods. Global debt is also expected to surge, potentially hitting 100% of global GDP within a few years. This isn't just an economic story, it's a stability story. Because when economies strain, political
especially
unrest
those
often
with
follows.
pre-existing vulnerabilities
And tonight the warning
and
is
limited
clear.
buffers.
The next global crisis may not be military,
We can show
but
you
financial.
here in its latest World Economic Outlook, the IMF is warning of three possible scenarios. That includes weaker, worse and severe. Under the most optimistic case, based on a short-lived conflict, global growth would reach 3.1%, down 0.2 percentage points from the January forecast. In the most negative scenario, though, growth would fall from 3.4% to 2%, and inflation could rise to 6%. The report says this would bring the global economy close to recession levels, a situation seen only 4 times since 1980. In the best scenario,
That is your short and detailed look at the top stories around the globe today. For continuous coverage and breaking updates, keep it right here on Millieberry TV. Thank you for joining us. Like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss a thing. Have an amazing day.